Dr. Helen Pringle, for offering more riveting insights in a short talk. I think I've heard before you packed an awful lot of interesting information in a very short talk. I feel yes, I won't say any more about your talk. I'll allow that to be summarised during the vote of thanks. Now, our third speaker is Mr. Andrew Patterson. Andrew Patterson is a former police detective specialising in child protection and the adult industry. Andrew holds a master's degree in ethics and legal studies and is a former chief investigator at the New South Wales Independent Commission Against Corruption. Andrew is a member of the Australian Sex Party, New South Wales, and stood as an independent candidate in the New South Wales March election, in the electorate of Sydney contesting the seat of Clover Moore. Andrew campaigns on the issues of civil liberties, equal rights, freedom of speech, religion and politics, and drug law reform. Welcome, Andrew Patterson, please.
Good evening. Thank you for the invitation. I'm going to start with a quote from one of my favourite authors. If you want a picture of the future, imagine a bird stamping the human face forever. For those who are similar fans, you'll recognise that as George Orwell. And in my view, the internet has really emerged as a key challenger to this bleak Orwellian vision. The internet and the associated digital technologies are effectively all one. And for the purpose of my discussion, I've referred to the internet. I cover all those associated technologies. The boundaries are quite now blurred and quite meaningless. Matthew talked about being a digital immigrant. I think they're probably around the same age group. But I guess with that particular antique, that makes me a digital Neanderthal. But so I'm one step behind you, Matthew. I think some recent evidence of the liberating power of the internet, certainly the Arab Spring across the Middle East and North African countries, where youth predominantly use internet technologies to mobilise and to rise up. And of course, the WikiLeaks phenomenon in the last 12 months or so. So to me, the challenges for youth in relation to the internet come down to two things. First is content, and the second is censorship. The concept of the web, or the internet as we know it, started in the 60s, but the public face of what we now either love or hate, or feel indifferent about, depending on our point of view, came into existence in the 1990s. So in less than 20 years, the field of human communication and information exchange has been completely revolutionised. Worldwide users of the internet now number at least 2.1 billion, around 30% of the world population. Every 8 minutes, more than 2 million words are written in blogs, and in that time, more photos are viewed online than exist in the entire Time Life archive collection. Facebook has over 500 million registered users worldwide, and Wikipedia has over 400 million viewers globally. And this really points to the democratisation of knowledge, and this is one of the great opportunities of the internet. The spread of knowledge amongst the common people is the liberating force. It has been over the centuries, and even more so now. So that knowledge is not just restricted to privileged elites, particularly clergy and academics. It's only a few centuries ago where the clergy had us all believing that the earth was flat. I can't see that happening now. The other key feature of the internet, of course, is ownership. Whilst traditional media is subject to ownership and therefore points of view, the internet is not owned by anybody. Individual sites may be, but the fact is that the net is completely unowned and is therefore completely revolutionary for the world of communication. It is interesting with all the fear and panic about the internet to look at history and reflect that every new communication form is brought with some sort of moral panic. In 1440, when Gutenberg invented the printing press, arguably, at least until recently, the major advancement in terms of communication, that permanently altered the structure of society. It spread scientific ideas, political ideas, and certainly democracy. But people then claimed it was a tool of the devil because it could be used to disseminate lies. Well, any form of communication can be used to disseminate lies. Human beings have told lies since time immemorial, and the medium is not going to change that. 1926 the telephone was invented, and people then claimed that, of course, family breakdowns, of course, we wouldn't talk to each other in person anymore. In the 1920s, television became commercially available, and there were claims then of social breakdown and drops in literacy because of television. In terms of content, I think there are a few areas which regularly crop up, I think are worthy of discussion. I think some of the great opportunities that exist with the internet and the associated technologies, certainly for improving communication amongst human beings, diversifying public debate across society and societies globally, and there is a massive educational value to the internet. It also means that everyone can potentially be heard, assuming that they have access to these technologies, and I'll come back to that point shortly. And finally, and I think certainly reflected in the last 10 years with the growth of social media, this really reflects the human desire for recognition. It might be celebrity, it might be banal, but at the same time, it does reflect what human beings want from the technology. Certain threats and problems I've talked about and are valid, even if they're overstated at times. I think one of the key challenges for the youth in relation to the internet is in striving to make sure that we don't end up with information underclass in society and globally. Matthew alluded to access to technologies, and I think this is a key issue to ensure that we don't end up with an underclass if we don't have access to information and the technologies. Many articles talk about dumbing down with the use of these technologies, either losing the ability to think deeply and to reflect, or we will simply adjust to a different way of absorbing information. Some commentators have talked about the infantilisation of our brains by using these technologies all the time. Mind you, if you try reading some of our print media, that probably has the same effect. And it is a valid question, are the brains of our youth becoming more inclined to constantly switching between tasks rather than sustaining attention on a particular task? The next area is that of banality. This did not arrive with the internet, of course. Again, if you look at the mass print media, at TV, particularly reality TV, my apologies to any fans, but I have to say that Big Brother is probably one of the most banal things that I've seen in my life. The problem here is the perception of banality with the internet makes it easy to justify limiting access to it. It makes it easy to criticise it as a medium. If it's seen nothing more than as a marketplace of banality. Quite a few commentators also talk about language changes with the use of the new technologies. But I have to say, language is an evolving thing anyway, irrespective of what medium we use. So we don't need to blame the internet for language changing. Yes, we have a lot of new acronyms, and even in the hands of like me, it's getting used to some of them. LOL, PAW, ROTFL, or around the floor laughing, I'm told that means. They have sort of accompanied the development of the social technologies. But anywhere we look in society, we are replete with acronyms, GFC, NBN, ETS, all the rest of it. And our language is regularly spun and bastardised in any event without use of the technologies. A couple of examples spring to mind. I'm sure we'll all remember the former Prime Minister John Howard with core promises and non-core promises. And a marvellous piece of bastardisation which I saw in my reading. This was General Motors Corporation in the United States when they were filing for bankruptcy, describing the process as, and I quote, an expedited, court-supervised process to accelerate the reinvention of our company. It's a nice way to go bankrupt. I'll move now to censorship. Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights states this: everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive and impart information and ideas to any media and regardless of frontiers. It has been reported that over 40 governments worldwide now are using some form of internet censorship. And the typical excuse is that they're protecting public morality. I'll come to our own blooming version shortly. The most extreme examples of countries using wide-ranging filtering technologies are China, Iran, North Korea, Saudi Arabia, and there's about 10 on recent Arab Spring, Egypt tried to black out the internet to stem the rising dissent and to prevent activists from organising. The blackout of the internet was 93% successful, but the dissent continued to grow. So even with 7% left, the revolution still occurred. The internet filter proposed by Stephen Conroy and the Labor government is looming. It hasn't gone away. Interestingly, Senator Conroy said earlier this year, and I quote, "Australia is a vibrant democracy where the government doesn't control the internet." However, that is exactly what he proposes to do with their proposal for an internet filter. And I make no mistake, this is an assault on our liberty, the likes of which we haven't seen before. It is the thin end of an insidious and evil wedge. I don't think it should be a matter of any pride that puts us into the same league as countries like China, Iran and North Korea. Let's look at some of the reasons and try and debunk them as to the rationale for having an internet filter and censorship. Allegedly, we need an internet filter because of our government-driven fear of pedophiles. In our era, sadly, there are two foolproof ways of galvanising people without contrary argument under false pretences behind draconian anti-libertarian laws and policies. You either cite terrorists or you cite pedophiles. If you do that, you stifle debate and dissent with amazing efficiency. Historically, governments have sought to legitimise their quest for power over the people by manipulating the population into either supporting or turning a blind eye to their manifestos. Many of history's worst atrocities have occurred with the tacit approval or sullen ignorance of silent, at best, complicit, at worst, populations. The Holocaust, the Soviet gulags, the slave trade, and the eradication of indigenous peoples are some examples. Why is the idea of an internet filter a fallacy? Well, firstly, it simply won't work, at least not for the purpose it's allegedly intended for. Anybody who is proficient with internet technologies knows how to use proxy servers and to get around filtering systems. And believe me, and I'll come to my professional experience shortly, pedophiles will certainly be able to get around the technologies. Secondly, we seem to be being sold the message that evils, pedophilia and child pornography suddenly arrived with the internet. And the cyberspace is now just one big virtual playground overflowing with raincoat-wearing predators. I know quite a bit about child pornography and pedophiles. As a detective in the West Australian Police, I set up and ran the first pedophile investigations team in WA. And in January 1995, I and my team made the first arrest of internet child pornography in Australian history. But I can assure you, child porn did not start with the internet. Prior to that arrest, we regularly see magazines, photographs, videos, and a number of films, almost none of it produced here in Australia. And any traditional methods of blocking that material hadn't worked, clearly. The other myth about the risks of pedophilia on the internet, and there are some risks, I grant that absolutely. But the sad reality is that most victims of pedophiles know their abusers. The offences occur in family homes, they occur in friends' homes, they occur in institutions in our society. And in relation to porn generally, you don't need to have the internet in order to access and be exposed to pornography. I grew up in the 1970s, in my formative years. There was no internet, of course. I saw plenty of porn. So you don't need the internet to see it. The next aspect, or the next myth in relation to the filter is this issue of being a global problem. The vast majority of child pornography consumed in this country is not produced here. The proponents of the filtering system claim that it can't contribute to stopping overseas offending in this regard. I would submit this is somewhat trite. Just after the Bali 9, some of them still face execution, just how effective our authorities are at collaborating with foreign police forces when it suits them. Even if the net filter would work on a technical level, and as I've said it won't, will removing our consumer base of child pornography affect in any way international production? Of course it won't. The Australian population represents less than half of 1% of the global population. In terms of consumers, we are insignificant in the numbers game. In any event, placing half-baked limitations on the supply of pornography over the internet will simply push both producers and consumers the two ends of the market into both more traditional means of supply and more likely other forms of electronic exchange. Which brings me to what I call the hidden agenda behind the proposal to censor the internet in this country. There are real things that can be done to combat pedophilia and to protect children, and particularly given my background, I'm in favour of doing everything we can to protect children in our society. Resourcing for our law enforcement agencies would be a good start. I know in my time for several years doing these sort of investigations, trying to get resources was almost impossible. It's also notable that Kevin Rudd and Stephen Conroy, when they were first moving the Internet Filter project, decided to cut the Australian Federal Police's cybercrime budget by over $2 million to put that money into the filter proposal. Another perhaps radical solution, if we were serious about child abuse, mandatory jail terms. We seem to bring them in for other things from time to time. Currently, almost nobody ever goes to prison for child pornography offences. If the government thinks it's such a serious problem in our society that they're prepared to curtail our civil liberties, why don't they make it into the serious crime that it represents? What is the hidden agenda behind the filter proposal? As I've said, the protection of children is absolutely worthwhile. But we don't ban the supply of alcohol to society because we don't want children drinking it. Same with cigarettes with adult publications. We ban them from children, not from the adult population. Well, I do suspect some of the hardline conservative elements behind the filter idea would also love to curtail other aspects of our free choice. To me, it does all point back to the hidden agenda behind the filter. In conclusion, I would say the political establishment is worried, as they always are, about having control over public opinion, and therefore their grasp on power itself. This grasp is clearly under threat from complete free exchange of information, and therefore ideas the internet enables. Today's youth have the possibility of a level of freedom of expression and exchange of ideas that no previous generation has ever come close to. The real challenge for our youth is to use the internet for all the significant opportunities it presents to improve the world, their world, in the future, and to defend its free and open nature. And if we do get a fair share of banality thrown in, well, I think that's a pretty reasonable price to pay for the ultimate tool to safeguard freedom and democracy. So in closing, my message to youth is this, and thanks for if you want an alternative picture of the future, imagine the switch being flicked and all the screens going blank forever.